people think about Candid Camera, and what first comes to mind is a form of practical joke. But my dad's real passion was observing human nature.
Writer and TV host Peter Funt today on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson. Long before there was Punk'd, or America's Funniest Home Videos, there was Candid Camera. The premise of the show is very simple. Take ordinary folks, put them into funny or unusual situations, and see their reaction. Its creator was a genial, soft-spoken man named Allen Funt, and he made Candid Camera one of America's most popular shows. His son, Peter Funt, started visiting the set of the show at a very early age, and eventually became co-host. And then when his father suffered a major stroke in the early 90s, Peter Funt took over as host of Candid Camera and hosted it for several more years. Peter Funt is also a very thoughtful and respected writer, an essayist, a columnist whose work has appeared in major publications for years. And in 2013, he published a collection of many of his columns, a book that he called Cautiously Optimistic. And one day that spring, he and I talked about the book, the TV show, and his father's legacy. In just a moment, our conversation.
Here's one that'll bring back some memories. One of the more than 10,000 interviews in the 30-year archive of national radio personality, Bill Thompson. Enjoy.
So here now, from 2013, Peter Funt. You are a gifted storyteller, my friend, a way with words that is just captivating. What was your overall intent with this book?
My overall intent, very much like my dad and I did on Candid Camera for so many years, was to put the type of material, in this case on paper, in our previous case on television, the type of material that I enjoy myself. I like things in small, manageable bites. I read an awful lot, but I very rarely read novels, and I very rarely read hundreds of pages at a time, and I often admire the folks who do. But I like bite-sized pieces, and I think that works when you're eating dessert because you'll stay healthier. And it works for me whether it's writing a newspaper column or the essays in this book. So I like what I like, and I hope some other folks do too.
Well, indeed, it strikes me you've always been the master of seeing the individual little stones of life that when you piece them all together and then take a step back, produce this rich, wonderful mosaic that is our country. Now, is that a skill you had to learn, or is that something you think you were born with?
It's probably a little of both. I was born with my dad's genes, and I don't know where he got that stuff, but it was certainly a big part of his life. And then I learned from him for so many years. I actually started on Candid Camera. I first appeared on the air at age 3. So I really go way back. And, you know, people think about Candid Camera, and what first comes to mind, understandably, is a form of practical joking. And there was some of that in the show for sure. But my dad's real passion was observing human nature and focusing in, as you said, on the little things that make us tick. And I share that passion. And I sometimes think we learn more about ourselves in, the way we deal with a broken parking meter, for example, than in the way we deal with our congressman or the bigger things in our life that, frankly, are largely out of our control. We reveal ourselves in how we deal with the things we can control. And that's what fascinates me.
I'm reminded, there are so many of the bits that you and your dad did that I remember so well. It was Fanny Flagg sitting at a lunch counter with a hat that had a long feather in it that kept getting in the guy's face. Next to her, there was a guy who was standing on somebody's toe while he was supposedly taking a survey, and he didn't speak English, and he only spoke French. And the
people whose toes he was stepping on had to ask passersby, "Do you speak French? Tell us how to get off my foot." Little things like that. Now, you've got an essay in this book called "The Joke's on Whom?" and you address this whole internet-driven fascination we seem to have nurtured now for pranking, but you also distinguish that from what you and your father did on Candid Camera.
Yeah, these are reckless times we live in because so many folks now have the tools to pull some kind of hidden video prank, but they don't necessarily have the self-discipline or the point of view that my dad and I had, at least. It's a jungle out there, and among the things I cited in that particular essay was this story last year about the Australian DJs who pulled a prank on Princess Kate when she was in the hospital at the early stages of her pregnancy. I'm sure you remember that story. It had a very sad ending because the nurse who took the phone call at the hospital in London and was very briefly pranked by these DJs went on a few days later to commit suicide. And there was a big, big uproar in the media and in social media about the culpability of these DJs in this horrible turn of events. And my position is that it is horribly regrettable. I'm not necessarily prepared to say they're very much at fault. They were really practicing a very old-fashioned kind of pranking. I don't know about you, Bill, but as a kid, I used to do telephone jokes.
Oh, yes.
And, call up people and pretend to be something, or order pizzas for folks at the dorm who weren't expecting them, whatever. And the truth of the matter is, if you listen to the tape of this Australian DJ thing, it was really rather harmless. I dare say it wasn't even very funny or well done. And the fact that it had such a horrible, horrible outcome, I think was just totally unpredictable. Now, the big difference, of course, and I guess this gets to your earlier point, is that in this day and age, the pranks might not be very much different, but their viral nature, the ability to put things on the internet and spread it around the world with such speed. From what I've read and heard from the family of this nurse, it was that explosion of international publicity that humiliated her to the point that she took her own life, not the prank itself. So it may be that we live in a time where the tools that people have at their disposal, that amateurs have, require much greater self-discipline and control than even was required for my dad and I back years ago.
Well, but in his day, your father had to deal with this very newfangled thing called television, which was a much more personal, much more warm medium, I guess they would say, than radio, because it's so intimate. And he used it very, very discreetly, very, very humanely.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. When he was at the zenith of his popularity, which was in the early and mid 1960s on CBS, there were a lot of people writing in major newspapers that Candid Camera was too cruel, that it was harsh. And it was, in fact, that criticism, few people know, it was that criticism that prompted him to coin his famous phrase that stuck to this day, "Smile, you're on Candid Camera," and to come up with a jingle for the show, a theme song that went along those lines.
When it's least expected, you're elected, you're the star today. Smile, you're on Candid Camera. With the hocus
To try to counter this, the idea that this was something you could smile about, it was not his intention to make people look particularly foolish or to carry a prank too far, certainly not by today's standards. It was rather to showcase the heroism, I dare say, of folks who could take a joke, respond under a little bit of pressure, smile about it. That's really what Candid Camera was all about.
And of course, remember, don't be surprised if sometime, somehow, someplace when you least expect it, some people step up to you and say,
And on the rare occasions, and I mean 1 out of every 1,000 or 2, where things went a little bit too far, no, we considered that a mistake, not a success.
After this short break, Peter Funt tells how his life was made insane by a family of raccoons.
You know, AI is not just for 22-year-old coders. A lot of us older adults are drawing on our life experience to find unique and creative ways to use AI, at home or at work. Got an AI success story you'd like to share? Tap the link below to visit our YouTube channel, AI After 40, and let's keep learning together.
Now back to my 2013 conversation with Peter Funt.
Now, let me move on. I want to get to a couple of the other essays in your book, because you have 72 of them in here. You got one called Stuck in the Spin Cycle. And this is going to resonate with anyone who's frustrated that in this, the second decade of the 21st century, we're becoming less informed than we were a generation or two ago, because the media are now so splintered. Who needs opposing viewpoints on anything? There's a blog, a radio talk show, a cable TV channel for every little niche of viewpoint.
Yeah, it scares me, because the type of information I enjoy the best is that which is edited, produced, and delivered by professionals who don't have a particular bias or point of view. And if they do, they keep it to themselves. It's not part of their reporting. In this day and age, everything is spun. And if you plan your life correctly, it's not how I do it, but if others do, they can bookmark the blogs that only reinforce their opinion. They can listen to the TV and radio talk shows that are simply rubber stamps for their points of view. They can read the magazines and papers. It can all be spun to more so than to inform them. Rather, it reinforces the views they already have. You might say it provides talking points for the rest of their day. This is a distortion, and it's also a very unhealthy, or certainly unreasonable, way to evaluate the information in our lives.
True. Now, I also wanted to remind people that in addition to the serious subjects of the day, they will also find in this book kittens, raccoons, and even a crow.
I'll tell you briefly about the raccoons, because this just drove me crazy. If you've never had a raccoon problem in your backyard, then you really have no idea what I'm complaining about. But if you have, then you know that a family of raccoons can attack a lawn, and the only way I can describe the damage is to say, imagine a 3-foot wide sardine can with the lid peeled back, or imagine a huge prehistoric-sized golfer who could take a 3.5-foot divot when he swung. Why do I have these images? Because this is the type of stuff that I envisioned as I lay in bed each night, worrying what was happening in the dark to my lawn that I'd discover the next morning. And there was a lot of rigmarole about how to get rid of these raccoons. The guy at the hardware store, first thing he said was shoot them. And that is not my nature. He suggested poisoning them, and that's equally unacceptable to me. And then he said, well, you could trap them. I thought, well, that's got a pleasing, humane sound to it. And I bought from him this trap, and I can only describe it as saying, I sat next to a lady on a 4-hour plane ride, and she had her little dog in a container that was far less plush than the raccoon trap this guy sold me. This was the Hilton penthouse of raccoon traps. And long story short, I finally caught a few of these guys, and I was, for weeks, driving them across town about 3 miles away to release them so they'd be far enough away that they wouldn't come back. But lo and behold, over time, they did keep coming back. And it was really driving me crazy. Finally, one morning, I'm 3 miles away from my house releasing a raccoon, and a guy drives up in a pickup and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm releasing this raccoon." He says, "Hey, I wish you wouldn't do that. We have our own raccoon problem." I said, "Gee, I'm sorry." He said, "Look, I have found a great place where I release my raccoons. Let me tell you where it is." And as he went on to tell his story, it finally dawned on me that the spot he was describing was a little less than 2 blocks from my house. And what was happening, apparently, was that I was trapping him and delivering him to him, and he was trapping him and delivering him back to me. Tell you one thing, if raccoons get their own app, you will see them smiling, because I swear to you, these raccoons are so smart that they not only do the damage they do, but they stand there and laugh at you about it.
Peter Funt is 78 now. He lives in California, and he continues to write a weekly newspaper column and is a popular public speaker. Now, you can get your copy of Cautiously Optimistic by Peter Funt by tapping the link in our show notes, by clicking the link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. Heardeverything.com is where you can also find my 1987 conversation with the great Fannie Flagg.
We would go to places like towns, and it would never occur to them. It would be so totally out of context, that someone from a film crew would be there. Usually what I would do is I would go up to someone and I would say, "Could you tell me where such and such is?" And the person would be so intent upon giving me directions, they would be totally unsuspecting.
And my 2003 conversation with another 50s TV icon, Superman's Lois Lane, Noelle Neal.
Kids in the colleges always used to ask, they say, "Oh, come on now, Lois, how come you didn't recognize Clark Kent was really Superman?" And I just said, "I didn't want to lose my job."
And of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can find us everywhere you find podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, a conversation with the woman who has represented the District of Columbia in the House of Representatives for many years, and before that was a longtime civil rights advocate. My 2003 conversation with Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Life is often what luck hands you. Luck handed me being born into the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement. Life is mostly what is there. Maybe you can grab upon it and do something about it.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.